Since the ITV had some problems, where I'm doing this using my Movavi app, and so as I had sent in the email, I'm going to be covering week 16's chapter 14 assignments. But to begin with, before I dive into those assignments, I wanted to cover the hands-on practice prior to doing the web case study. However, we can go over briefly on the assignment hands-on practice 14.8. The first part of this hands-on practice instructs the reader to enter the code given and save as the file form.html. So as the hands-on practice 14.8 on page 596 states, it's in this hands-on practice you will create a form with inputs for name and age and use JavaScript to validate, verify the data in the name field and a value for age of 18 or greater. If there is nothing in the name field, an alert message will be displayed that indicates an error. If the age value entered is less than 18, an alert message will be displayed that indicates an error. If all data is valid, an alert message will be displayed indicating that the data is valid and the form will be submitted. Okay, so the first part of this is creating the form, and they actually provide the code there in the assignment. And that code should be saved as form.html. And they state that in this part of the exercise, the form.html has not been configured yet to check for proper entry. So when we actually open up that form.html, the first time we would run it, it would not cause any error until we actually put in the validate .html. So that if you did the initial code here, ran it, you could submit, and it's not going to give any error. The form will just simply submit. So as it says, accessing the form inputs is a little tricky. The form is a property of the document object. Each form element is a property of the form object. A property of a form element can be a value, so the HTML for accessing the contents of an input box could look something like this. And you see the code there, document.forms, bracket 0, close bracket, .input box, underscore name, .value. This is identified by forms 0 to indicate which form will be used. And seeing that there's an S in forms, it's actually going to contain, the document will contain multiple forms. So we're going to start for the validation by adding the code to validate the age, which is this code here. And follow that by adding the code to validate the name, which is the code here. And as I said, we're just going to briefly touch base on this hands-on practice 14.8 because you can actually go to the student files, and the entire code is given there in chapter 14, 14.8, form.html. Okay, and so that's one part of your one of your assignments for this chapter 14, due week 16, which would be May 3rd, or May 2nd, actually. No, which would be May 5th. Sorry. Okay. So after that hands-on practice, we'll move out of JavaScript and take a look at jQuery. Many websites, including Amazon and Google, use jQuery to provide interaction and dynamic effects on web pages. So what can you do with jQuery? You can work along with JavaScript, provide easy ways to dynamically manipulate the CSS properties of elements, detect and react to elements, and animate elements on a web page. So whenever you're working with adding jQuery to your web page, you need to add a line of code into it to access the CDN, the Content Delivery Network, which have the frequently used code and scripts for jQuery. There is one of the disadvantages, of course, though, is that you always need to have a live internet connection when you are coding and testing your pages. So using Google's CDN, or Content Delivery Network, we would add this line of script here in the head section of your web page document. Another necessary part of code is the jQuery statement referred to as the ready event, because you have to inform the jQuery library when your web page's DOM has been completely loaded. Also, the alias for jQuery, you can either put the text jQuery, or, which is most commonly used, you can use the $sign character. That's the most common usage because it's shorter. So the syntax for the ready event is as follows here. And then you can place your JavaScript statements and additional jQuery statements after the opening line in the ready event. Now, there are a number of hands-on practices associated with the jQuery section. You have hands-on practice 14.9, and that code is duplicated in the student files under chapter 14, 14.9 ready.html. You can familiarize yourself with how they're using that by accessing that code. Then we have a commonly used jQuery selectors. Now, in these commonly used jQuery methods on page 604 here in table 14.6, you can see them used in a number of hands-on practice. This one here, which is in chapter 14 of the student files, changeme.html, is a good demonstration of the click event where the text color changes for two of the demonstrated pets and doesn't change for one of them. And like they say, the best way to learn to use jQuery is to practice coding. In 14.10, they demonstrate with the click and toggle, and that code also in the student files in 14.10 toggle.html. And I also have that available. See if I have that. For demonstration here. So you see you have a statement here under jQuery. Clicking on the more brings up the rest of that. And you can click on more one more time and that hides the rest of it. That's accomplished with the div ID details. Two other examples from the student files in that same section 14.10 of chapter 14 is the fade toggle and the slide toggle, both of which I have for demonstration here, and you can actually use the code yourself from the student files. So we have slide toggle. When you click on the more, the other data slides into the screen and slides away when you click on more once again. And the fade, clicking on more, and gradually you'll see the rest of the information appear slowly. Then there's a section covering using jQuery with a gallery. To practice with that, you also can reference the student files, or you can type all the code they mention to get the practice of working with it, or you can look at the code in the student files under 14.11 toggle.html. And then 14.12 hands-on practice gives a demonstration which can be obtained from the 14.12 student files index.html, and then 14.13 demonstrating the jQueryValidation.org plugin. And this hands-on practice 14.13 will see referenced in your web case study for the yoga. And so with that lead in, we'll go ahead, leave the rest of the chapter, which isn't much left in there, for your own reading and practicing with the student files. This one, 14.13 index.html, again, we'll be referencing that in the web case study, which we'll be covering next. So I'm going to end this portion of the class video. It'll be uploaded by tonight.